Well, hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast, our penultimate tennis podcast of 2025, our final tennis podcast before Christmas. How festive are we feeling, David Law?
Oh, 7.5 out of 10 festiveness at the moment. But, thought I'd get this out of the way first, and then I'm going to go the full 9.
Get this out of the way before I let myself feel festive. That's a real incentive for everyone to keep listening. Matt, let's have some vibes.
Well, big of you to say and sort of guarantee that it's our penultimate podcast of 2025 in the week of an emergency episode. I'm feeling very on alert at the moment for emergency tennis news. Stuff does seem to be trickling through right now. But I'm feeling pretty festive.
Podcast. It's our penultimate until Andy Murray announces that he's coaching Carlos Alcaraz, and then we'll see you on YouTube.
All bets are off.
Yeah. That's probably where we should start, isn't it? Kind of pick up where we left off from our last emergency podcast, talking about the shock news that Juan Carlos Ferrero and Carlos Alcaraz would no longer be working together. For anybody that didn't hear our podcast at the time of recording, we had some reporting. Matt and David had been speaking to Spanish contacts, so there were bits and bobs of substance, but frankly, that podcast was a lot of speculation, kind of educated speculation. We had Matt Futterman of The Athletic on the show, educated speculation based on what we know about that relationship, what we know about Carlos Alcaraz and his team setup and the involvement of his family, and also what we know about coaching relationships in general, particularly ones that are formed in childhood and have to go through a kind of evolution process as the child grows into an adult, and in this case an adult superstar at the top of the game. Well, we now Matt have some more solid reporting to go with that speculation, some of which renders the speculation utterly redundant, and some of which somewhat confirms some of our speculation, I would say.
Yeah, I think so. It doesn't strike me as like there's been a huge rift between Carlos Alcaraz and Juan Carlos Ferrero. I think that was pretty evident probably in the statements that they both put out. There was a lot of love there for each other in those statements. I think the reporting is hinting at more tensions between Ferrero and the Alcaraz camp more generally, obviously, of which Carlos Alcaraz is very much part, but the wider Alcaraz camp seem to be the ones mostly sort of implicated here. Reporting from Angel Garcia Muñiz, who's a very prominent Spanish journalist.
This is why I had Matt do this section.
Yeah, mine would have been an interesting pronunciation, wouldn't it?
Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
He works for Cope, the radio station in Spain, and I've also seen some of this reporting backed up in Clay magazine as well. Kind of that sort of Carlos and his team have made significant efforts recently to establish Murcia as their operational base, promoting the Alcaraz Academy, where we've seen Alcaraz training this week with Flavio Cobolli. Cobolli seemingly giving Alcaraz piggybacks around the court has been some content that I've seen dropping out of the Alcaraz Academy this week. Sort of pushing for that to be the base and for Ferrero to kind of relocate his team over there rather than the other way round. And also, kind of as Matt Futterman very much suspected, a few economic expectations in this contract that apparently he was sort of unwilling to meet with, I suppose the Alcaraz entourage probably wanting to give him slightly less than he wanted. So that seems to be the picture, that there was some disruption there. There was also some reporting in Marca that Ferrero only had 48 hours to actually sign the contract that was given to him. And honestly, all of this kind of reporting makes me feel worse about it.
Same.
Like I think I could kind of get my head around it if it was kind of what we were speculating in terms of Alcaraz has decided that he totally needs a new guy for this next stage of his career, and Ferrero had been brilliant to get him to this point, but now he needs to kind of, cut loose from that sort of father figure in Ferrero and go to someone else. And, if it was sort of part of Alcaraz really growing up and making that decision the best for himself, I could have understood it, I suppose. I think part of that is in here, but because I think it does strike me that maybe Alcaraz really, really would have fought for Ferrero, if he did desperately want him to come on and if he had the power to do so. But this sort of situation, this sort of falling out with the team, or tension with the team, maybe falling out's not quite right, because a lot of Alcaraz's other coaches and physios and trainers are attached to the Ferrero Academy and they're staying on. So there's not been a sort of total breakdown of relations. But this element, Juan Carlos and the team and economic problems and logistical problems, I kind of just think surely you can work some of that stuff out if you're still the best guy to be the coach. Yeah, I'm not feeling great about it a few days on. I was really shocked at the time, but trying to explain it and reason it, and now it's not leaving a great taste.
Yeah, I don't know what you think, David. I had exactly the same thoughts as Matt. After our emergency pod on, when was it, Wednesday, sort of my shock was slightly tempered by some reassuring thoughts from Matt Futterman in particular about how this might be actually a very, although sort of turbulent in the short term, in the medium to long term, quite a necessary, healthy step in terms of Alcaraz's maturing from boy to man and him taking agency of his own career. I'm always sort of slightly irked out by the shadowy figures in the background that seem to be pulling strings. Particularly, I feel more uncomfortable with female players when it's invariably sort of older men in the background. But still, the men are still sort of young men with minimal experience of the world, and sort of shadowy figures in the background pulling their strings always feels a bit uncomfortable to me. And I thought it seemed really plausible that this was a step away from that sort of situation and Alcaraz taking more control of himself. But this reporting, as Matt's laid out there, kind of suggests potentially the opposite. Okay, it's his father that seems to be playing a big role, who, that's sort of slightly different in terms of a shadowy figure. But I still instinctively see sort of overbearing parental involvement in tennis players' lives and careers as a red flag, even if the parent in question seems untoxic and unproblematic. I don't know. What do you think?
Instinctively, similarly, I feel, but at the same time, I do think you can read the decision in two ways. I think you could look at it as him not just wanting to go along with what Ferrero's demanding and continue training at his base. He wants to train at his own base. He wants to train where it suits him. Yes, there may be influences there that are overriding Ferrero's, but perhaps in the end it is Carlos Alcaraz's decision, and he's decided, no, this is a red line for me. It's an interesting one. The fact that he hasn't ended up going with Ferrero, I think in itself is some sign of potential strength and independence of decision making. I've seen enough of them on the court over the years to think, well, you seem pretty reliant on this guy to me. And I would be wary in the short term about expecting an upturn of results. I mean, look, you can't go that much of an upturn, can you, given how well he's been playing? But
12 in a row, David.
Well, that is true. And listen, I still feel like in the long term he could. I do think he needs to be able to develop as a young man and as a human being, and be able to be more independent from Ferrero. I do think that at some point that was going to need to happen. This just feels like a wrench, like he's been wrenched out of that situation, whether it's through his own decision making or pressures or whatever. And I think in the short term, we may find that he has a downwards trajectory for a bit.
There is reporting, isn't there? I by no means confirmed, that he is looking for a direct replacement as head coach, and it's not just a case of Samu Lopez stepping up into the and everybody sort of taking a promotion. Victor Barber becoming the hitting partner.
Here comes Pablo Carrera Buster.
He's still waiting by the phone, David. Which is interesting. And the other interesting thing that occurs to me about this situation is Alcaraz isn't playing a warm-up event for Australia, which, fine. Nor is Jannik Sinner. But he's so much better than everybody else besides Jannik Sinner in men's tennis that this could provoke a crisis in Carlos Alcaraz, and we might not really know it until the Australian Open men's final, because he can beat everybody else in crisis.
Certainly possible, and equally he's had runs to Grand Slam finals that weren't like that US Open, and Juan Carlos Ferrero was there. So I don't think we're going to just be able to establish cause and effect immediately and that sort of thing. But
we're going to be trying, aren't we?
We'll be trying.
That's our trade.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be doing it after every other day on the pod.
I'll be at the front of the queue, Catherine. Don't you worry.
Yeah. David, I've got on the agenda here, just while we're on Alcaraz, David's hair advice for Alcaraz. I don't know what that means. Please explain.
I'm excited about this. It's been in the agenda for about 5 days. One day I just opened it up and that had appeared.
This show is always one of our most random of the year, isn't it? Our last one before Christmas. I mean, there always ends up being enough content because tennis be tennising, but it's like straggly content. It's random. It's really hard for me as a presenter to segue from one agenda item to the next.
Yeah. Well done.
This is one of the easier ones, David.
Yeah, look, this just dropped on me late one night. I was lying in bed, and it suddenly occurred to me that Carlos Alcaraz should be making his US Open buzz cut a non-negotiable at the start of every Grand Slam tournament from here on until he loses one, because I find him terrifying when he does it.
12 buzz cuts in a row.
Yeah, I find it a terrifying look when he first does it. I think it would be the most incredible statement to the rest of the field. Here we go, lads. I'm ready. Let's go. And I mean, look, he was as awesome as he's ever been at a tennis tournament during that US Open. I really believe that it was a great sort of Marine-like statement that I am ready for battle. And I think it got in his own head, and he enjoyed it. And if I were him, I'd be just doing it. Like Tiger Woods putting on a red shirt for the final round of a major, telling everybody you are about to be defeated. I'd be doing the buzz cut at the start of every Grand Slam.
Well, you might have persuaded me with the Tiger Woods thing. My counter to you, David, isn't the beauty of it, and potentially why it worked so well, is because it was organic. And, quote, an accident the first time around.
Oh, that made it entertaining. So to try and recreate
it in a very confected way.
Oh, I think it's an awesome statement. I genuinely think it would rattle the opposition.
I think people would get used to it. Matt, do you have any thoughts on this while I prepare my next segue? It's okay if the answer's no.
I like David's thinking. I don't think he will do that.
I know, and then he'll lose, and then he'll wish he had. You
This isn't making it any easier for our the perils of trying to establish cause and effect in Australia, is it? We've got another thing to throw into the mix.
Exactly. So it's just as important.
If 2025 was the year of David asking players about vegetables, can 2026 be the year of David asking tennis players about their hair? Hashtag journalism.
It's a single-use question, isn't it?
So was Are You All Right with Carrots?
Well, I mean, it needed asking. This does need asking as well, to be fair, but I'm not sure I'm going to be doing it. We'll see.
Okay, moving on to a vaguely related topic. We're going to stay with breakups. Grigor Dimitrov and Dani Vallverdu have parted way after 8 years together. Matt, I think you and I had a similar reaction to this. Where have those 8 years gone?
It's been pretty part-time, I suppose, hasn't it?
Like, has it?
It wasn't.
What, because of Grigor's injuries?
But also, Vallverdu was also working with Wawrinka a bit.
That's what I was thinking. Like, surely Vallverdu has worked with other players in the last 8 years.
Del Potro, even, I think, for a little while.
But that's what the announcement said. We've had 8 years together. I was like, have you?
I mean, it was at Vallverdu who announced that, because I could imagine that he might want that to be the narrative in a way.
He's suggesting he's lying on his LinkedIn profile about his time with an employer.
I know that Dimitrov has really had the feelers out looking for a big new coach. And I think I'm quite pleased about that, because I think there's quite a statement to it that he doesn't see himself as in the final throes of his career. It'll be interesting to see who he ends up with, because I don't think he's reached fruition, certainly with one or two of the ones that I think he approached. But I think he needed. I think if he's going to make another push, he probably needs another big statement coach. But no, I mean, to me, I know they were dividing time, but I mean, Jamie Delgado was also coaching Grigor Dimitrov, and I didn't sort of see a big announcement about that as such. But yeah, I mean, look, if you have been part of the team in a way, for I suppose you do. Obviously, he's friends with him and cares about him. So, but I don't think of big news. 8 years has just ended. That's not what occurred to me.
Do you think he does have a last push in him, David? He only needs one.
No, I mean, listen.
Mary Carrillo thinks somebody might, quote, squirt out a slam. Could it be Grigor Dimitrov?
The thing is that I think he showed in the last year that his game hurts still. I mean, what he did to Sinner, you can't erase that from memories. For 2 sets at Wimbledon at a Grand Slam, he's taking him down. But his body is taking himself down time after time. That is not. I know that that might be slightly freakish to get that kind of injury, but to keep on getting hurt and retiring from major tournaments tells you that when he pushes his body to the absolute limit, something breaks down. If he could sort that out, I do think he's not too old. But well, the body would tell you otherwise, depending on how often it's breaking down. I don't think he's sort of declining as a tennis player. I think he's a real threat still. But and I think it would have been good for him it will be good for him if he gets a coach who can really establish a direction. And I feel like Delgado and Vallverdu actually certainly the last couple of years got the best out of him using his slice. He had the best identity to his game that he's ever had. And I actually think that there was room for more improvement there, certainly with his serve. But at the same time, I don't have any faith in his body at all, I'm afraid, because the evidence suggests there's no reason to.
Sorry, Matt, but I want more of David's takes.
Me too. I'm enjoying it.
This is what happens when David is, quote, overslept. Before we came on air, David explained that he'd had too much sleep last night, and I genuinely don't think I've ever experienced a David Law in our 18 years of knowing one another that has had too much sleep. So I just did not know how this pod was going to go, but it's magnificent.
Yeah, and I would say I've underslept, so the learning here is sleep is good.
Yep. Yeah,
well, you've been telling me that for years, haven't you?
We balance one another out. Next and final split on our agenda, slightly different one, an extremely surprising one. Certainly for me, this was reported by Ben Rothenberg in his Substack Bounces. Naomi Osaka is leaving the agency that she co-founded with Stuart Dogood. The agency is Evolve. If you're thinking, where have I heard that name recently? They are behind. They're the promoters of the Battle of the Sexes. They also represent numerous tennis players, formerly Naomi Osaka, of course, Aryna Sabalenka, Nick Kyrgios. It was, I'll repeat, co-founded by Naomi Osaka. This was her agency alongside Stuart Dogood. They left IMG to form this agency. It's being reported by Ben that she's returning to IMG. We don't know why, Matt, but leaving your own agency feels pretty dramatic to me.
Yeah, very, I would say. You know, again, trying to draw cause and effect, like, you know, this is a time where that agency has obviously been in the spotlight more than it ever has been. It sort of garnered attention at the start of the year when they got Sabalenka, as you said, but right now around the Battle of the Sexes and the controversy that has provoked, you know, the timing of this decision by Osaka doesn't feel sort of totally unrelated, certainly from the outside. But at the same time, I did see reporting from Jessica Schiffer in her Substack Hardcourt that Nick Kyrgios' podcast is moving from YouTube to Tubi. Is that how you pronounce it? Which has a distribution deal with his podcast production company Hana Kuma, which is still owned by Naomi Osaka. So if you sort of think that this is a sort of Osaka totally distancing herself from Nick Kyrgios or wanting to, I'm not sure would be entirely true. You know, there are still very much some sort of ties there, but it might be a first move. It might be totally unrelated to the Battle of the Sexes. I don't know. It's just the timing of it feels a little, you know, coincidental.
Give it a year and we'll be big on Tubi, Matt.
I might have learned how to say it.
David's big on TikTok. Imagine when overslept David hits TikTok. They won't know what's hit them.
Well, we'll be clipping up his Dani Vallverdu takes and TikTok will be getting them.
I like Dani Vallverdu.
What takes have you got on this, David?
He's a lovely bloke, and he's clearly a good operator. But yeah, I just don't think of him as
We're back to
the coach.
We're back on this.
Like,
so pleased.
Do you? I mean, I just don't.
I need Osaka Evolve takes from you now, David, please.
Well, yeah, I mean, I suppose that is immediately where my mind went, you know, just in terms of the potential cause and effect with the Battle of the Sexes. But even so, you know, that's Patrick Mouratoglou and this agency that she's separated from in the last year, and that that does feel quite significant on both counts. And my sense is that it's probably a good idea. I don't, I mean, look, she's obviously made an absolute fortune with this arrangement. I think she probably would have done anyway. I think she's the most incredible athlete and person that brands want to be associated with. So I don't think there's any issues with making money. It's how you make it, I suppose, and what you want your setup to be. And it's usually the other way around these days. It's usually the player breaking away from the big agency and establishing their own thing. But yeah, this is quite interesting. It does take me back to when we interviewed Max Eisenbud from IMG. How little they panic when somebody leaves, because they always feel like they're going to come back eventually, or that they've got confidence in themselves. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one to follow.
I bet Max Eisenbud and IMG are feeling pretty smug about this. Whatever went down, this is a massive feather in their cap, isn't it? Massive. Okay, that's it for part 1 and our breakup segment. We'll be back in part 2 to talk about a hookup. Welcome back to part 2 of today's tennis podcast and some more bits and bobs of news. We are, of course, going to talk about some live tennis that has been happening this week. It might have escaped your notice, but the Next Gen Finals has been happening. David's watched some highlights, such as his diligence as a podcaster. So we will cover that, don't worry. We've also got a backhand list update and, most importantly, a 1 Point Slam entry list update. But as promised, we start with news of a significant get-together in the tennis world. The announcement that Mercedes-Benz are to be a, quote, long-term sponsor of the WTA Tour. And now the WTA are using very pointedly that wording, long-term partner. Others are reporting that this is a 10-year deal and a hugely significant one financially for the WTA. We knew they were looking for a new premium partner. I think it was pretty widely known that Hologic weren't going to be continuing with their partnership. My understanding is that Mercedes-Benz are putting more money in than Hologic, as much as Hologic seemed like a very natural fit for the WTA and came along at a time when they really needed them. I think that partnership would be broadly considered a success. My read, Matt, on this announcement is that this seems like different gravy for the WTA, this partnership.
Yes, I saw some reporting from Molly McKelvey in her Substack saying that Hologic was 4 years and worth $20 million annually, whereas this is thought to be worth upwards of 400 million over 10 years. And, some people are describing this as the biggest deal in women's sports history. This is a different level altogether. And I think, a few years ago, the WTA laid out their plan, didn't they, to award equal prize money at the combined events by 2027. And I think this kind of deal makes that much more possible and probable, and that's a really encouraging thing. I think it's going to be February before we see the Mercedes branding on the WTA events, and there's a few WTA events that already have car deals, Stuttgart has Porsche, and I think Lexus is involved in quite a few WTA events. So I think there's some working out to do in terms of what happens with those tournaments a little bit. But yeah, we're gonna start seeing Mercedes everywhere, and Mercedes is a big. I do associate tennis with Mercedes as well, and Mercedes with tennis. It was had that long deal with the ATP, didn't it? Very much your sort of time at the ATP, I think, David, wasn't it? Late 90s.
The Mercedes Super 9 is what it used to be called.
That was great branding, wasn't it? The Mercedes Super 9. That really had teeth. Like, that stuck.
Yeah,
People were calling it
definitely.
that for a very long time.
Very visible
After
on
it
the
wasn't
net as
actually
well.
called that anymore.
That Mercedes star really pops out of the net and just became
Mm.
something you thought of as the net.
Mm. Yeah. And look, you know, I'm sure they'd have gone with a different partner if they were sticking up that, you know, I'm not saying they this is a sort of necessarily a consideration, but like the kudos of that brand wanting to back the WTA in this way, I think means something and sends a real statement, and it is cool. And I know there are kind of negotiations ongoing for the sort of partial merging of the ATP and WTA tours. It's all really knotty and a lot of the sort of language around it is very corporate. Sort of they're starting off by merging their marketing arms. That you might hear talk about WTA and ATP Ventures. That's the merging element at the moment. It's seen as a first step towards, you know, the final destination being the eventual merging of the tours, although that feels a pretty long way away, and the path to that is by no means fully mapped out. But this first step along the path was supposed to be mapped out, I think, and the WTA are now in a very different negotiating position, a very different position of strength to the one that they were in when the terms of that deal would have first have been talked about, when they were in a position of relative weakness to the ATP. And I do wonder if that'll change things. You know, the WTA can come to the table with their chest puffed out a little bit.
Yeah, and just on from a Mercedes standpoint, I can't know exactly what the deciding moment was for them to decide to commit to this sponsorship. I think it's fantastic that they did, but it does occur to me that what an amazing story to be part of if you were the company that got them to equal prize money on the tour. Even just cynically as a kind of, you know, positive PR move. Why aren't more companies thinking like that? You know, and if they are, kudos to them. Good for them. You know, stick your money behind something that makes a real positive message change. And so yeah, I hope that that's where we are able to end up in a couple of years' time as a result.
Absolutely. ATP announcement. They're introducing a heat rule. Don't know what's taken them so long, but they're doing it. 10-minute breaks there will be during best of 3 set singles matches in 2026. Incredibly similar, to all intents and purposes, pretty much identical to the WTA heat rule, which was established 30 years ago. But, you know, men are strong, Matt, and women are weak.
Yep.
So
yep.
I remember when the Australian
Open...
Not
much more to be said, really.
Yeah, the Australian Open in my first year there, maybe they did it because I was there and they thought, oh, he looks like he needs heat rule. 2003, the wet bulb globe temperature was talked about for the first time I'd ever heard
about
of it.
the wet bulb.
Yeah, I still don't really understand it, but anyway, here we are. 22 years on, and you know, the men have seen the state that those players were in Shanghai and various other tournaments, and just thought, okay, well, now we're going to do something. Not before time.
Does a wet bulb mean that humidity is factored in and it's not just raw temperature reading? That's what a wet bulb is.
Yeah.
Okay. Wasn't expecting to say wet bulb so much on this pod. But there we are. Okay. What should we talk about now? What would you like from this? There's no obvious segue to any of these next agenda points. Take your pick.
I think there is. Catherine, staying with the ATP.
Should we stay with the ATP? Okay. Staying with the ATP, then let's talk about the next gen finals. Had you forgotten they were happening? Yep. Me too. They have been happening in Saudi Arabia. Its final year being hosted there in Jeddah. I believe they are looking for a new home for it. I believe that nobody quite knows what that new home will be. I thought the ATP might see sort of Jeddah not wanting to renew their hosting of this event as a sort of opportunity to quietly put the next gen finals to bed. But apparently not. It's going to be continuing. So in a year's time, David, you'll find yourself also watching highlights of a pointless tennis event for the sake of podcasting. Tell us everything you gleaned from your highlights.
Well, I can tell you that it got me quite pumped for tennis again. You know, I wasn't really expecting that.
David's a fast four guy now.
Yeah, well, I mean,
we all are after the mixed doubles, remember?
Yes, I do think that has changed my outlook a bit on fast four. You know, I now look at it slightly differently. But yeah, I do think the timing of this event is one of the things that is problematic in that it's just.
Well, I believe it is moving next year. The plan is, if they can find a host, it's moving back to the plan is. I don't think this is announced, but the plan is for it to move to be prior to Turin next year.
There's more sense to that to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I realise it's so crowded in there; it's difficult. And look, I'd rather they move the whole thing forwards, but. Yeah, I mean, it's nearly Christmas. It doesn't. You're in the off season. Yeah, I haven't been seeking out these matches to watch them live, and I feel slightly guilty about that as a person who's co-hosting the tennis podcast. But I need a break from the sport, really, in terms of watching it to get the appetite back. But when I put these highlights on and saw Lerner Tien, who's always a great watch, you know, he's got to the final, and he did actually lose his first round robin match, so he ended up having to go through the most extraordinary of calculations in order to get there, but he did. And then he's going to face the Belgian player Alexander Blockx, whose highlights I watched several of, because I don't know that much about him. I sort of feel like I know who Lerner Tien is. He's been on our screens a lot over the past year. He reached the final a year ago against Juan Fonseca, so we kind of knew a little from him there. He's had a real breakthrough year. Blockx is still outside the world's top 100 and has actually played most of his tennis on the Challenger circuit. He did qualify in Cincinnati earlier this year, so he's kind of had a couple of tour wins and lots of Challenger match wins. But I sort of thought, you know, I don't think I've really seen much of him play. You know, I just like to watch a guy away from the results and just get a sense of who they are as a tennis player. And I mean, he's 6'4". He's one of those players that rallies with you and then suddenly decides that this is the point, the shot on which I end the rally one way or another. And it's a forehand, and it is absolutely spectacular power that he has on the forehand when he really pulls the trigger. The rally will either end on a winner or an error when he decides to go for it.
He sounds fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is interesting. He's an interesting player. He looks a little stiff to me, I would say. He doesn't. I mean, he is 6'4", but it's a bit kind of Karen Khachanov-like in a way. I'm not sure.
Less fun.
Well, we'll find out.
You had Catherine, and then you lost her.
But I like the and he was coming forwards. You know, there were some rallies he's finishing at the net. But it's more just, whereas with Khachanov, I think he needs to do more of finishing a rally one way or the other and not just playing the percentages. This guy clearly decides at some point, I'm done with percentage tennis and it's going to end on my forehand. And I like that.
But sorry. So Matt's coming in with Blockx takes.
Well, Blockx has been a name that I've seen a lot. You know, like it's an interesting name. The fact that it sort of ends in an X.
Yeah,
like I've sort of just been drawn to his name in
junior. I know he's done big things in juniors because I've seen that name.
Yeah, well, he beat Lerner
when you're
Tien.
looking out for names to be on your radar.
This was final, wasn't it?
This was the 2023 Australian Open boys final, and Blockx won it. And Blockx, I was looking, played doubles that tournament with Fonseca. So it is interesting that, like, as David was saying, Fonseca and Tien have made that jump up to the tour level just a little bit quicker than Blockx, but he is very much of that cohort of players. Yeah, certainly one to watch. He was at the Davis Cup finals that I was at in Bologna. He was part of the Belgian team, and he was, he wasn't playing, but I saw him hitting with Zizou Bergs the first day I got there, and like easy power for he's tall, but he's quite lanky. Like I don't think he's fully filled out his frame yet. But as David said, he does have big power when he wants to use it. And I think he's got quite big serve as well. So yeah,
Make him sound like Milos Raonic.
Karen Khachanov. Get in line to watch Alexander Blockx next year. But I don't know, like as much as I haven't been watching the next gen due to its position in the calendar. It's, taking part in Saudi Arabia. It's fast four. It isn't something that I personally am massively drawn to. I do like the idea of it. I like that it exists. And I do think it is a good thing
as well.
For these players. It's got a good track record. I think it
Steam
works
a bit, hasn't it?
as an event.
I mean, they've all come through it, haven't they? If you think about it, Tsitsipas, Sinner, Alcaraz, Fonseca.
I've been rude about it. I think this is a weak year for it. This is the least attention I've ever paid to it, because a lot of the men's shit qualified, and if you won Miami, you're not playing the next gen. Although apparently the injury that kept him out of next gen is legit, and he was intending to play. I was going to ask you, do you think it's a bit uncool of Le Nathan to be playing this?
I don't.
Having reached the final last year.
I quite like it. I mean, Le Nathan, he's got Michael Chang there as well, and I think that I felt it last year when I know Artifice didn't end up going on and winning the thing, but he played it 2 years in a row, and I quite like the idea of somebody just deciding, no, I want to have this. I want to tick the box of winning that thing.
You sure it's not the money?
Well, I mean, it could be the money, but I mean, once you get to this point, I mean, these guys have got a lot of money, but it could well be. No, I don't. And listen, I do feel like the biggest problem to me is where it is in the calendar, and obviously where it's being played. I'm not a fan of, but I think it should be a something they want to win as part of the progression. I do go back to Medjedovic winning it and expecting a lot more of him as a pro, and I sort of still hope that that's there. But the absolute vast majority of the ones that have won this thing have ended up going and having serious careers. So I think it is a good indicator. I mean, Le Nathan is such an interesting player because he doesn't have the one shot power. He beats people in so many different ways, and yet you feel like there's a vulnerability because of his serve being so attackable, and so he's one of the more interesting players around, whereas Blockx is much more out of the standard identikit of a current day tennis player, strapping big lad with a huge shot.
You successfully made him sound pretty boring. I've got his measure, David.
I think you quite enjoy he's quite up and energetic. There's hear a lot from him. I think he's more spectacular than Raonic and Khachanov. There's definitely much more explosiveness to him.
Okay, I'll give him a go.
I'm trying to reel her back in.
I've enjoyed seeing just on social media, just like the first little real partnership between Bassavoretti and Gilles Savara. Gilles Savara's been there. That's, I think I'm excited about that for next season. I believe Bassavoretti sustained a finger injury prior to taking to the court against Le Nathan, which made that semi-final much more one-sided than it could have been. I think it was a bit odd. He was bleeding and really affected in the match, but I'm not. Maybe it is out there how he sustained that injury, but just an odd one to affect a match in such a big way. A finger injury sustained before the match had even started. But I think he'd been quite impressive. He's put in a big training block, I know, before this. And he's another one who I think I was probably saying the same thing this time last year. I'm excited to see Bassavoretti.
I'm a Bassavoretti believer.
Right. So let's see it in 2026.
Yeah, put it on manifesting for 2026. Any other next gen takes before I move
No,
us on?
I am now out.
I sense that David might not be.
No, I'm pretty much out.
Feast was there, David, I saw.
Yes, Feast was there in
I
a
thought
sort of
maybe that was why you were
capacity.
watching. Yeah, with his
I was
afro.
gonna say he's an ambassador, isn't he? Of
oh yeah,
all that. So
okay.
Yeah, and
not my
Nadal
favourite
Good hair,
thing
though.
also. Nadal also
great
was
hair.
there
With
his role.
I hope Feast is able to make a proper go of his career physically. It'd be such a blow if he's not. I'll be gutted. So, fingers crossed.
That is it for part 2. Join us in part 3 for other stuff.
This is so much fun.
Welcome back to part 3 of the tennis podcast, where we have 3 more agenda items that have absolutely nothing to do with one another. Goodness knows I'm going to link between them, but we start with huge news. I can't believe I've waited till this far into the podcast to tell you, if you haven't seen already, that Coco Gauff, Iga Swiatek and Jannik Sinner have joined the field to play the 1 Point Slam 26. Matt Roberts, my new Roman Empire is one of Coco Gauff or Iga Swiatek beating Nick Kyrgios in the 1 Point Slam. It's all I can think about.
Wow, okay. I always try not to think about Nick Kyrgios.
Look, the universe is making it so that I can't not think of Nick Kyrgios.
I think it'd be funnier if he lost to, Paul Smith from New South Wales.
Absolutely, but I'm trying to have realistic dreams.
Okay. Well, look, I would get on board with that for sure. I feel a bit stressed on Coco Gauff's behalf about the 1 Point slam.
That she might double fault in the 1 point.
Well,
no,
the
it's only one
serving
serve,
element,
isn't it? Might single fault in the 1 Point Slam.
Ooh.
Do you think Gavin McMillan will be there?
I hope not.
Yeah,
I don't know. I've been working on a theory that I'm pleased that Gavin McMillan, I think, generally is trying to help, but also I think his presence at matches has made Coco Gauff a bit more stressed and in her own head about the serve.
Looking at him either.
Yeah, it's just very stressful. Also, I don't know how I feel about this. I think it's cool for the amateurs that there are better players involved this year. I think if you're an amateur, you'd want to take on the best pros over 1 point. Yeah, it's more fun. But I'm really not interested in seeing Gauff Swiatek 1 point.
No, me.
It's a weird tension with the 1 Point Slam in that respect.
No, it feels precarious. I'm really, really trying to lean into and learning from last year, which was going in terribly cynical and coming out with a childlike sense of wonder in life. It really changed me, the 1 Point Slam.
Cynical to evangelical.
It really taught me a lesson. So I'm really trying, the announcements are trying to beat me down again about the 1 Point Slam. They are trying, but I'm trying to counter that by remembering the life lesson that I learnt this year. So I'm really trying to be positive about it. But yes, I fundamentally share your anxieties as well. Iga Swiatek against Coco Gauff in one point, or Alcaraz against Sinner 1 point. I suppose.
I'd love it. I can't wait for all of it.
I mean, again, I think I prefer that to Omar Jasika against Priscilla Hon for over 1 point. But it also just doesn't really.
Own charm, though.
It did have its own charm, but I don't know. I want to see as many of the amateurs against the pros over 1 point as possible. That to me is the best bit.
Yeah.
If they could just keep the in between match faff down a bit, and I'm
I
not hopeful.
fear there's going to be more of that because
Yeah,
it's
I
going,
mean they've got to
it's on
make a
the
show of it,
telly
haven't
and
they?
it's I presume it's going to be on Channel 9.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of Todd Woodbridge.
Faff.
No offense, but chatting to people, and I mean, look, he's very good at it, but I don't want to see too much of that.
It's not what we're here for, is it? But we'll be in the stadium, so no Todd Woodbridge for us.
Well, you don't think it'll be on the loudspeaker? I do.
We'll be chatting through that. I'll be screaming through that. Do you remember me at the last 1 Point Slam?
Yes, I do. Yeah,
Vividly.
Yeah. I hadn't. It will be on the loudspeakers, won't it? But yeah, it's going to be good, guys. It's going to be good. Is that all the spots filled, or are there still announcements to come?
No, I think there's so many
More.
to fill.
Yeah.
I think so.
But most of them
gonna
will
be
be filled
quite-
by AMs, no? From the qualifiers on the Monday, which is in my diary.
Is it going to be 128 draw?
I could be wrong. You're the 1 Point Slam expert. I thought the final field was going to be more pro heavy than
that
am
is
heavy.
the case, yeah.
And they haven't announced that many pros, so I think there must still be quite a lot to come. I imagine
gonna be
I
watching-
imagine we will get the announcement of the sensations to come over the next.
Lizette Cabrera still has a chance.
Except, speaking of which, I saw some happy sensation news that Madison Inglis and Jason Kubler are engaged.
Oh,
That's nice, isn't it?
yeah.
Matt, you and I are going to be watching
That
this
should
whole
have gone
thing
in
jet
the
lagged.
Yeah.
in the hookups part of the pod, Matt.
You're
New
right.
section. for
Although,
once a
if
year.
they're engaged, presumably they hooked up a while ago.
Yep. Next agenda item, bearing absolutely no correlation to the previous one. Backhand list update for the new year. Matt, this was announced in Wrexham, but you're ready to bring it to the wider public.
Yeah, Wrexham have had their 2-month exclusive, and
Quite a window.
I just thought it was necessary to update the people about the quite drastic move that I made in Wrexham as we head into the new season. I came up with a solution that I'd been butting up against very regularly now that Amanda Anisimova is such a dominant force on the tour and playing everyone so regularly. And I've said it many times, I was confronted by the fact that actually it's been a list of one. And when Amanda Anisimova has played Andreeva, for example, another member of the backhand list, I've just realised that Amanda Anisimova has sort of outgrown the backhand list, we could say. So I'm trying to admit to a mistake, I'm trying to grow, I'm trying to evolve, and I'm formalising something that I've felt for a while, and that is that Amanda Anisimova has been elevated above the backhand list, simply the backhand, as we refer to her anyway. It's a sort of Yoda-like position that she assumes, sort of backhand master, and everyone else is a sort of backhand knight or Padawan in training. Do you see what I'm doing here? So I've officially elevated Amanda Anisimova to the backhand, opening up a spot on the backhand list, because that will remain a list of 5. And I also bumped off Belinda Bencic, mostly for reasons of using her protected ranking to play mixed doubles with Alexander Zverev. I will admit it wasn't a hugely heavy backhand decision, but it did
Look, it's your
influence
list,
me.
Matt.
That it's my list. So that actually opened up 2 spots on the backhand list to join Coco Gauff, Mira Andreeva and Maya Joint. And I elevated from the watch list to the list Victoria Mboko and Emma Raducanu for 2026. So that's the announcement, that's the picture heading into the new year, and I feel very comfortable with it.
It's a very young average age your squad age. It's like the anti-Fulham. Got a lot of longevity in those legs and backhands.
How long, Matt, do you give a player to prove themselves worthy of a place on the list? My question comes up because what if you see an amazing backhand from a player you'd not really seen close up before during the Australian Open, a bit like when Victoria Mboko came to our awareness last year, but you can't just think, oh, well, there's a great one. On she goes. See you later, Elena Rybakina. You know, I mean, what happens?
There's no rule, you know. As always with the backhand list, it is a feeling. And I would say Maya Joint was the most impulsive backhand list decision I'd ever made. That was quite an in the moment decision. Watching her backhand, we remember we were watching that Eastbourne final in the Wimbledon press room, and there was that incredible tie break. It was just great fun, and Joint got herself on the list there and then. But normally you would be put on watch list status, and then then you're in a chance of joining the big leagues. And
that's unpublished, isn't it? We don't even know who's on the watch
it's unpublished list. It's not restricted to 5. If you leave the backhand list, you automatically join the watch list.
Catherine, you're on silent, I think.
He's loosening the parameters, isn't he? You noticed that, David?
No, I'm not.
I also think there's an element of
not
crowd pleaser about Maya Joint. You know,
an element of what?
Crowd pleaser.
You think he's trying to please Australians?
Well, I think he was a bit shaken last year.
We all saw him at halftime at the Melbourne live show. His crisis of confidence about his appeal in Australia. I've got to win them round.
Not related to why we're not doing a Melbourne live show this year, to be clear.
Yeah, because you did win them round with a prediction that Lexi Popperin was going to win the Australian Open.
We had a lovely time.
We had an amazing time. It was great.
We had a really lovely time.
We need a break.
Agenda point for today's show. The bombshell news that 50-year-old Stan Wawrinka will play his last year on... No, he's not. But he is. He's in his 40s. I think he's 41. He's old. He's old for a tennis player. 2026 will be his last year on tour. It's not a bombshell agenda point to end on, is it? 41-year-olds to end career in a year's time. But there you go. So he's going to do the farewell tour thing, David.
41 in March he is. And I am personally quite happy he's doing it this way. This is kind of what I thought Novak Djokovic should be doing. And listen, if Djokovic wants to have 3 more years and thinks he can, fine, but I also think it would be a good way for him to go out. And I really think it's a good way for Wawrinka to go out, because he's had a couple of years where he's not really been able to be a force like he used to, but he loves it. He's kept on wanting to see what boundaries he can push, and fair play to him. He can play as long as he likes, But I think what this does is it gives him a year to get used to it and go foot to the floor and try to have some moments and probably get given some show court spots that he wouldn't otherwise be given, maybe get given some extra wild cards, and really underline for fans, make the most of watching this bloke's backhand. Let's not forget what he did in this sport, what he did when Novak Djokovic most wanted a title probably in his entire career, and Stan Wawrinka wrestled it from him, even though Djokovic was in this incredible vein of form. He had that ability to just bend things his way, whether you liked it or not, and no matter how great you were as an opponent. And we've had some some amazing moments watching Stan Wawrinka, and I'm really pleased that he should now get some amazing moments in as a sort of goodbye.
That's an important, interesting point you make about the wild cards, because he's in a position where he's going to need wild cards this year, and like announcing that this is his final year on tour. I'm not saying it's a cynical announcement purely with that in mind, but that probably is a factor, isn't it? Like making that public.
You've got to give that. Yeah, I think
he needs those
it
wild
probably
cards.
is. Yeah,
and
because
whereas
the French
Djokovic doesn't.
Think of Dominic Thiem, when he didn't get one at the French Open, for instance.
I think about it all the time, David.
I realise Stan Wawrinka won the thing, and that is a step further. But yeah, I mean, I do think it's a little challenge.
Well, this year the French did give Stan Wawrinka a wild card, and I'm sure they will next year. I think the interesting one will be the US Open. They didn't this year, but he obviously is a former champion there as well, and if he plays the full major season, that would be that'd be his final major. You really do think that they would probably want to sort of have that moment, the US Open.
They gave Caroline Garcia one.
Yep.
Like, come on. Do you think he'll bring back the shorts for the French Open? I think that would be a cool move.
Well, that's a great idea.
Yeah, just putting that out
there.
there.
With the Alcaraz hair.
If anybody is listening that has any sway at all in the Wawrinka shorts department, you know what to do.
Is Djokovic Wawrinka the most one-sided head-to-head on paper that also feels like such a proper significant rivalry? It's 21-6 head-to-head in Novak Djokovic's favour, and yet it's the nature of those six, and in particular a few of them, like Wawrinka beat Djokovic en route to winning all of his major titles, including a couple of finals. They had other 5-set matches. Like, it was such a thing that Wawrinka was the only guy who could go toe-to-toe with Djokovic in a little period over 5 and really just push him in a way on all surfaces, certainly clay and hard courts. It was a singular thing that Wawrinka had. It was extraordinary.
For a while, he was seen as Djokovic's Grand Slam bogeyman. He was. It was an ooh la la moment when he came out in his section of the draw. Like, oh, that's the nightmare that Djokovic didn't want. Definitely for a period of time that was the case.
I had some of the most fun I've ever had commentating on tennis, commentating on Wawrinka against Djokovic at the Australian Open a couple of years in a row.
Yeah, 13 and 14.
Just incredible matches. I think one of them was something like 15-13 or something in the final set, and it's just astonishing, really. What he would make you gasp as a commentator doing radio. You couldn't quite believe what you're seeing. Yeah, I kind of want to go and watch some highlights of that. Because the thing is, here we are in 2026. It's a long time ago. And he's going to do his absolute best to roll back the years and give us some memories. But, that bloke from 13 years ago.
And he was a late bloomer.
Right, yeah.
Right? Like, he'd already been around quite a while before he actually, fully clicked in to gear and became the force that he was.
Well, I think my personal favourite Stan Wawrinka memory was... and this is very specific to sort of the privilege of my situation at the time. I watched most of his match with Dan Evans at the US Open in 2016 from courtside on Armstrong Stadium, but old Armstrong Stadium, late at night, carnival atmosphere, match point saved by Wawrinka. I was there for Eurosport, so we were covering it from a very Dan Evans lens, and obviously then we went to town for the rest of the tournament on the storyline of, was Dan Evans sort of the runner-up of the 2016 US Open because he had a match point against the eventual champion. That match was unbelievable. it had everything you wanted a tennis match to have. And I remember, I just remember the feeling of sitting there at courtside and soaking that in and just feeling like I couldn't believe my luck. And that was 10 years ago, and Wawrinka would have been 30.
Right.
No, 31, I guess. Because that was August, September 2016. Yeah. Crazy stuff. Okay, I kind of don't want this podcast to end. It's been really fun. David, any just rogue takes you want to throw at us? Let's make the most of this one day when you've had enough sleep.
I think I'm out. But, I've now got 2 weeks myself to just, refuel
Great.
restock.
This bodes well for 2026. We still have one more podcast in 2025, though, a week today. Matt and I will be here with Charlie Eccleshare from The Athletic, previewing the 2026 tennis season and also talking about the Battle of the Sexes, which will have taken place that day. Do join us for that if you can face it. We'll be trying to face it together. I am looking forward to being able to spend some time with you and Charlie, Matt, after what I'm sure will be a challenging day watching the Battle of the Sexes. So I'm glad we get to do that show. And then the next day I'll be getting on a plane to Australia. So good things are coming, folks. What's the snigger for?
No, I was just laughing. How we're going to turn a low moment into into good times.
Well, not that this is a low moment, but I have some good times for you now. We have a 2-time pet mascot. I remember this. This is Marcy, owned by Catherine Moriarty. Catherine said, I was going to pick our dog Berry, also pictured, but she can't stay awake for tennis. So she's picked Marcy, her cat, a long-haired Tuxie type cat, which I think is short for tuxedo cat. Marcy's favourite players continue to be Iga Swiatek and Jannik Sinner. Her past favourite was Andre Agassi. How old is Marcy? She says...
Maybe she's been watching YouTube.
She says her mum always references him. Okay. Marcy says our other cat Kitten isn't in the room for tennis at all. So Marcy's clearly the tennis diehard, the intergenerational tennis diehard in the family. And Catherine really got the memo, because the photo that she sent in of Marcy has her pictured with canine brother Berry, brother, sister, who knows? And it's animals being friends. It's an inter-animal friendship, and that is my favourite thing outside of the 1 point slam. So thank you, Catherine, and thank you, Marcy, who really is gorgeous. She's got a black splodge on her nose. I've got a soft spot for tuxedo cats. I love that dense white fur. Very lovely, very cosy, very appropriate cat for this time of year. So hello and thank you, Marcy. Hello to our top folks and executive producers, Greg, Chris and Jeff. We are part of the Athletic Podcast Network, and we have shout-outs, Matt.
We have one special shout-out today. It is a birthday shout-out, and that is from Ben Goligor and his older brother Matt for their dad, Ethan, who is turning 85 on Christmas Day.
Oh, happy
birthday. Happy birthday, Ethan. I feel sorry if people have their birthday on Christmas Day.
Do you?
Yeah. Yeah. Because,
you want to share your celebrations around?
Yeah. Santa's stealing your thunder, isn't he?
Well, Ethan gets a happy birthday from us.
I think I'd quite like that.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
Do you not like to be the centre of attention, Matt?
Correct.
No.
I much prefer other people's birthdays to mine.
Yes, that checks out for you, Matt. But you'd never be able to go out for your birthday? Everything's closed.
You could go out next week. But I get your point.
Yeah. Anyway, Ethan, I hope you are having a wonderful birthday. What a lovely, lovely thing for your children to do for. Well, we think it's a lovely thing.
And we've got
really
a nice
thoughtful
little message here from Ben. Ben says, our dad got us into tennis as young kids, bringing us to the public tennis courts in New York City at Riverside and Central Park, where he still plays today. Ben says that as a result, tennis has been an integral part of his whole life. Ethan is a loving grandpa to 4 grandchildren, and we all met Ethan and Ben and perhaps Matt as well at the live show in New York in 2024. And my favourite little extra detail here is that Ethan wrote a book on psychology and tennis in the late 70s called Psychodynamic Tennis, being one of the pioneers.
This is that guy.
It is indeed. This is a little thing that I don't think even Ben knows. And that is that when Hannah and Vicky were at Wimbledon in the summer, they visited the Wimbledon Library, of course, because they're excellent people, and they found Ethan's book in the Wimbledon Library, and we have the most fantastic photo of Hannah holding that book and just loving the thought of it and the idea of it. So, yeah, what a wonderful thing. Thank you to Vicky for sort of helping to organise this shout out on this day for Ben and Ethan. And yeah, a cool little extra note that we have known about Ethan's book for a few months, thanks to Hannah and Vicky. So yeah,
and it's called
brilliant.
Psychodynamic Tennis by Ethan
Exactly.
Gallagher. The subheader is You, Your Opponent and Other Obstacles to Perfection. Maybe I should give that a read.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ethan, happy birthday. Hope you are having a wonderful day, wonderful Christmas. We wish you a wonderful 2026. We'll be back a week from today. Thank you all for listening. Happy holidays. We'll speak to you then.